Hello, everybody. It is Wednesday. That's hump day. Let's talk about everything that's going on with Bitcoin today. And there is quite a lot of news, despite the fact that Bitcoin is pretty stable. It's trading a bit like a stable coin. I hate that pun, but yes, it's crazy. But in terms of good news, there is a lot of good news on the horizon. We'll talk about some of the flippening that's going on. We'll talk about some of the institutions that are stacking hard and some that are not. We'll talk about some projections as well from some institutions. Touch on the playbook trending, the MicroStrategy money glitch, Cathie Woods in El Salvador, the political aspect of how a lot of people hodl, how somebody was able to recover $3 million worth of lost Bitcoin, which is fascinating, as well as some price predictions and a whole bunch of TA and top and bottom indicators and so much more. 35 nuggets. Let's go real fast. Shout out to Patreon as well. Thank you, B-Man. And this is from JJ. Just joined Patreon. Better late than never. Well, thank you for being part of the group. Let's go. Let's start with the news today, not the charts, although we have a lot of charts to follow. But we'll knock this out. First of all, the big news is IBIT beats Grayscale. The rise of Blackrock beats out not only Fidelity for the top spot, but also Grayscale. And it is the fastest growing ETF ever, which is stunning. When we look at the charts right now, there is now 288,668 Bitcoin within BlackRock and only 287,000 within Grayscale, 162,000 in Fidelity. And then you go down the line, ARK is number 4 on the list, 48,000. Bitwise, 36,000, and VanEck, 10,000. After that, it's crumbs. But it looks like BlackRock, as expected, would be the new 800-pound gorilla, and that's happening fast. And they are just ramping up. We'll share some of that data as well. Thank you, Mr. Zhu, for coming. Now, this was from Bitcoin for Freedom. Only Wall Street and hardcore Bitcoiners are buying Bitcoin right now. According to Google Trends, normal people are as interested in it now as they were in June 2023 when the price was 25K. By the way, June 2023 was a good time to buy, and that's about 11 months ago. Things change fast in this space. Now, the first number crunching exercise of the day is Bernstein. They came in and they have about $725 billion in assets under management, but they predict $100 billion inflow into Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs by 2025. Now, what by 2025 could mean is by January 1st, 2025, or year-end 2025, or somewhere in between. Either way, I crunched it a couple of ways. First of all, let's look at the impact of $100 billion inflow on just Bitcoin alone. And that basically, if you take that as a share of assets under management for the big banks that are playing with this, the $30 trillion that they have, it's only 1/3 of 1%. Now, that's spend of $100 billion. If we take our 21 multiplier, which I used back in 2021, that would take the price of Bitcoin to 208,000. If we use the 56x multiplier, which is the pre-halving multiplier from early 2024, that would take the price to 441,000. And if we use the 112, which is the multiplier apparently right now, which has worked some of the time, that would take us to a bonkers number of $814,000. By the way, the Bitcoin price right now, as we speak, is $67,500, a price level we haven't been at since yesterday. And of course, people think it's dead. Bitcoin's on life support. I just read that in the comments here. This is so funny. Now, assuming not all of this money goes into Bitcoin, but 15%, which is my estimate of how much will go into the ETH ETF, 85% will go into Bitcoin. Same multipliers. Then you have slightly different numbers. The future price of Bitcoin could be 187,000, and using a 56 multiplier, 385, and 112 multiplier, 814. The numbers are still crazy, and it's only a matter of time before this actually does happen. We'll show some more price targets as well and see how this backs in. I still have this monster sheet of about 35 different pricing models, which I'm going to aggregate all together and make a dedicated video on that too. But it's a lot of work. It takes time. And every day I keep finding new pricing models. So be patient. It is coming. Now, let's talk about this. which is another part of the whole game theory. I talked about the day before yesterday as well, because it's very important. Now, it's from David Bailey, and he is apparently, rumor has it, an advisor to the presidential candidate Donald Trump. But they're talking about they are in negotiations to run the MicroStrategy MetaPlanet Playbook in 2 more foreign capital markets, not just the addition we had yesterday of Menzler, the biotech company out of Santa Clara, California, who also is following the playbook, but more. Now, what he says here at the bottom is kind of interesting to me. You want a company that's generating enough cash to sustain operations, but the more income they make, the lower the density of Bitcoin per dollar of market cap you can get to as the income trades at a multiple. Now, this isn't, I tried to back into exactly what this means, but my interpretation is, suppose company A has a market cap of $1 billion and holds 100 million in Bitcoin. The density of Bitcoin per market cap is 0.1, i.e. 100 million divided by 1 billion. Now, if company A's income doubles and its market cap increases 2 billion due to higher valuation multiples, the Bitcoin holdings remain at 100 million. Now, the density will fall then to 0.05. But we know what typically happens is as the price of Bitcoin goes up, the more significant the actual holdings become as a percentage of the whole business. And we saw that happening with MicroStrategy, and now we're going to see it happen with more companies. But the fact that they're talking about 2 more companies in different capital markets, which means not Japan, not North America. One is probably in Europe, the other one, who knows where. But that will be interesting. And again, it's happening more. And that company that added yesterday, Menzler, I think their market cap went up by 33% in 24 hours. So it works. And I would have bought it. I would have traded it, but it's not optionable. I only trade options, so I didn't. Anyway, let's talk about other news too. Cathie Woods is in El Salvador and meeting with Nayib Bukele and to talk about new capital markets and innovative opportunities that exist down there. And Nayib really has put El Salvador on the map and totally cleaned up that country in a big way. That's gotten the attention now as well of the head of Argentina and people like Cathie Wood and others. It's yet another example of how Bitcoin fixes this. The Bitcoin playbook, the money glitch, hardness, boom. We're going to see a lot more of that too. So we're still early, everyone. Don't freak out to think Bitcoin's on life support. By the way, Bitcoin just went up $100 since I started, so that's good news too. Now, speaking of $100, a lot of people think retail is sitting it out, or maybe they're just playing meme coins. But I love this meme that I saw this morning. When Bitcoin is $100,000 and everybody comes back for advice, Bitcoin is an IQ test, as we say here. But sometimes price will drive the retail FOMO. So we'll see. A lot of people are still thinking about, should I buy at 65,000, 66, 67,000? It's going up. How much is a question, but it is going up. Now, not all things are huge successes, though. The UK ETN was a total dud. And this is from JVS, James Van Straten. And this is the London Stock Exchange. New crypto ETNs had a very sluggish start. Only 200 shares traded. And the price is like peanuts. £23 or something. Anyway, the reason it's a total dud is these professional investors already had access to things like Blackrock and FBTC and Grayscale. They don't need this. So again, it's proving to be less successful than Hong Kong was, believe it or not. And in political news, before we get into the charts, this is a Grayscale Harris poll that they did with, I can't remember how many thousand people, but basically 47% of American voters indicated that they expect some of their investment portfolio to include crypto. So it is no longer possible to deny crypto. You would basically eliminate half of the electorate. And this was a cool piece of news too, because we have issues like this all the time with people losing their keys, forgetting their passwords, getting locked out of stuff. And there could be a little secret here for some. This was an article from Wired and how researchers cracked an 11-year-old password to a $3 million crypto wallet. So sometimes all is not lost. Do not fret. Do not be anxious. The problem, and I'll try and summarize this real high. A guy called, I think, Michael stored his Bitcoin on a wallet with a password generated by an application called RoboForm to get it's a password generator of some sort. And he forgot the password and they tried to break it down and get back into it. Now, he knew the approximate time frame and the version of the software that created this password, and he knew the password length, and he knew it had no special characters. And time traveling back, they tricked RoboForm into generating passwords as it would have in the year 2013 by setting the date and time back. And after many attempts, they actually cracked it, which is awesome. So remember, if you are in that situation, you got $3 million stuck in the wallet, you can't get into it because you forgot the password, check this article out. Super interesting. Let's get into the charts real quick. First of all, from Hey Apollo, Bitcoin ETF tracking. What they're basically looking here is 237,000 Bitcoin net inflows year to date. Okay, that is nearly 250,000 Bitcoin have been added to ETFs, and that includes over 300,000 drainage out of Grayscale. There's been 30,000 Bitcoin added in the last 30 days. I'll repeat that. 30,000 Bitcoin stacked by the ETFs in the last 30 days. And if this pace continues, ladies and gentlemen, if this pace continues, that means 500,000 Bitcoin of inflows by the end of the year, which would put the price of Bitcoin somewhere between 150 and 200,000. And I checked this with our multiplier, and the math is correct. The money coming in will float all boats. There's more news about money as well in a minute. So shout out to Hey Apollo. Also, a lot of people are nervous that we are at the top. Now, this is the Maya multiple, and it measures the difference between the current price of Bitcoin and the 200-day moving average. Super simple, but super effective. And according to Trace Mayer, a value of 2.4 or more is considered a time to back out. But we're only at 1.27, so basically less than half of that. Long ways to go, ladies and gentlemen. And to confirm that too, because I like to find confluence among many indicators, this is our top and bottom indicator right now and where we stand. Now, the chart at the top, it's a different view I created of it for you all, so you get a different perspective. Sometimes it can get busy if two charts are overlaid on top of each other. So I've got the top and bottom indicator at the bottom, the log chart of Bitcoin at the top, going back to the year 2014. Now, when the top and bottom indicator starts going orange, dark orange, and red, that's time to really start getting nervous. But right now, we're still in a very cool light yellow. So we are far, far away from the top as well. So relax, everybody. And another view of price targets from Plan G, Giovanni. He shared this on Twitter this morning, and he talks about how Bitcoin price is fluctuating around the power law that is acting like a form of resistance. That's the green line across the top. And he believes we are going to move along the power law until the beginning of the frenzy bull, and that happens at 9 Bitcoin o'clock, which according to Giovanni is around November 2024. And then we break through and it starts going parabolic, the breakout. Now, the plan for price around middle of October, before the frenzy actually happens, which would be the top of the green line, would be about $93,000. So could we be there in 4 or 5 months? The answer is very possible indeed. And I love going back to these things and check exactly how effective they are over time. And the big flippening happened. Blackrock eclipses Grayscale at last. There was a hope that we'd do this by the halving, but it's about a month late because we did have a quiet month. Hey, Piper, good to see you up there in Canada. And now this whole bleed out has happened. IBIT passes Grayscale to become the largest Bitcoin ETF in the world, everybody. This is history. That just happened yesterday. And I always talk about, my tinfoil hat is well attached, my conspiracy theory of what I call the Black Mirror. and that is the IBIT GBTC mirror is back. I saw a direct inverse correlation. Grayscale would dump, BlackRock would stack. Grayscale would dump, BlackRock would stack. Well, that just happened perfectly yesterday. Grayscale dumped 105 million, and guess who stacked 105 million? You can't make this stuff up. There is something going on here, and this chart tells you that maybe there's some coordination happening. Who knows? They haven't done it in a while, but yesterday was like, boom, perfect Black Mirror episode. Now, speaking of other stuff, liquidity, which is so important to us all, this is from Willie Woo. I know his charts are hard to read, so I apologize for that. But Willie, if you're listening, can you blow them up a little bit so people can at least read the numbers? Anyhow, much respect for all that you do. And I know people can be very critical, but when people give me the feedback, I can't read the chart. So it's coming to you. Now, this shows you this chart here, 2.5 months of consolidation under bullish demand has been very good for Bitcoin. In fact, yesterday I showed how different March 2024 was to May 2024. Despite being only a couple of months later, the on-chain data is completely different. Now, this is the BMO, and this moves one level down and now has 2 to 3 levels to climb before a macro market top. And this is based on net capital flows into the Bitcoin network that bottomed during the consolidation and now has been climbing ever since. All you need to look at is the green chart at the bottom and how it did dip, and now it's growing again. And we saw that as well with the ETF flows as well growing. So it's all pretty logical. And speaking of growing, something else that's floating all of our boats, M2 money supply from Charlie Bilello. The US money supply increased 0.6% over the last year. All of that action happened in the last few weeks. This is the first year-over-year increase since November 2022. And of course, the Fed is now buying their own bonds back too, which is another historic event that hasn't happened in quite some time. So yes, more money will come into the system, debasing everything and raising risk assets. Be in risk assets. Now let's talk about Bitcoin Only playlist. It'll be here after the video. Let's get into the ETF numbers. And I will be back later today with a new series, what we call the Minority Report, like on Bitcoin miners. A quick report because a lot of stuff happening in that space too. Let's talk about day 95. We're nearly at day 100, ladies and gentlemen. And we did have that 105.2 bleed out from Grayscale with 102.5 incoming into BlackRock. Almost a perfect net off. Net positive 45 million. Not big considering we had a couple of $250 million days, but it's still a win, and that's not bad. I expect some of the other names to pop over the coming week. And it's weird because normally Tuesday historically is the strongest day for the ETFs. Yesterday was a weekday because the Grayscale bleed was very intense. Maybe people holding Grayscale got nervous because of the Mt. Gox news. That could have rattled a few cages too. Let's look at the macro view of what this looks like. Again, Grayscale lower than the day before, but still enough to absorb the entire dump from the green line, which is Grayscale. BlackRock is red at the top, and Fidelity is blue in the middle. They're really the three ones you need to look at all the time. Now, we had 11 positive days in a row into the ETFs. That is super good going. We haven't had that for nearly 3 months. So that is great news as well. Thank you, Zeno, for coming. Although it was a net positive of only 45 million, we'll see if we can continue this roll. Again, there will be, I believe, that perpetual bid for these things as people start allocating automatically a percentage of assets under management. Whether it's 1/3% or 0.5% or 1%, considering the amount of money in the world, that is enough to keep this thing trending. Again, if it were not for Grayscale, these things would be a lot higher. Now, let's talk about the amount in the new ETFs. I haven't shown this chart in a while because it was getting a bit stale, but we did have a big change. We've got that new record right now, BlackRock being the biggest ETF on the planet, and Grayscale lost over 323,000 Bitcoin since January 11th. That is way over half their bag. And if you add the 323 plus the 245, 246, you get 569,000 Bitcoin in the new ETFs. And remember, there'll never be more than 14 or 15 million. they already own a big chunk of that, and that will continue as we go forward. And this thing is scarce. Grayscale, their dump in perspective, that was the worst dump they had for over 30 days. It was a bit of a shocker to be so low below trend. But hey, that thing will just continue to bleed out forever. So with that, final chart of the day, 659 Bitcoin were pulled from the system. And I know it does not sound a lot considering we had 4,500 Bitcoin days, a whole bunch of them over the last 10, 11 days. But that still is nearly 1.5 times daily issuance, which is massive. We'll talk more about daily issuance and miners in a few hours. Thank you all for coming. Hit the like if you enjoyed the show. And 5,500 people watching live. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to the mods in the chat for keeping us all safe. Sean, TND Tesla, K8, and everybody else out there. Have a great day. Bye-bye.